Peter C., you're Director of Land Programs for KJ, and you've been fantastic taking us around for the last few days. But probably a good starting point would be for you to tell us what KJ is, and where do you fit into the picture?
KJ is a Martu-controlled organisation, KJ stands for Kanyirninpa Jukurrpa, or holding or retaining, looking after culture, after dreaming, or Jukurrpa. A significant part of the work that KJ does is about building communities and sustainable communities, Martu communities, and we have a strong land management program that's been built up over the past 2 years.
Right, and one of the things that obviously we've been looking at is feral camels and the damage that feral camels do to infrastructure, but also the landscape. But I guess one of the biggest impacts that we've seen is the impact on the Martu people. Do you want to tell us broadly about that? What sort of impact do camels have?
Well, camels have had a big impact on Martu. I mean, when we first started the land management activities, I spoke to Martu about what their concerns and issues were, and foremost, Martu want to get back to country, and they want to take their young people and teach their young people, and they want to look after country. And when you're talking about looking after country, if you ask them about what it means to look after country, for them it's to bring back more bush tucker, more malu, more kangaroo, more emu, more animals that traditionally they would have hunted. And the other thing which they very clearly said was there are too many camels. In Busherman days, in old days when people walked this country and lived in the desert, there weren't any camels. But progressively, over time, camels have built up, and Martu have made the connection that the increase in numbers of camels have really impacted on the health of their waterholes, the health of their country, and also on the number of their bush tucker and the other small animals which need water and food to live on.
Right. It must have been a very difficult decision for Martu, because you can tell when you're talking to people that they have a real love of the land, they have a real love of flora and fauna, and I guess, partly, let's be honest, part of this is also survival for them over centuries. It must have been a very difficult decision for them to make about feral camels.
Look, it was. 2 years ago, talking to Martu would strongly say, yes, there's too many camels, but, we don't want to shoot them. Can't we send them to the Middle East? Can't we get people to buy them? Can't we use them for meat and things like that? And the Martu do. They're one of the Aboriginal groups in Australia that are actually happy to eat camel, young camel and stuff like that. But the reality is that when we looked at all the different commercial options, they just didn't add up. This is country which is a huge amount of country, huge amount of desert, 13.6 million hectares. A lot of it is covered by long sand dunes which are up to 8 metres high. You've got the Gibson Desert in the far southeast, all very, very remote and inaccessible. And for us to be able to get those camels out and get them to market, so to speak, we'd be paying other people money to actually remove the camels, and Martu wouldn't be making anything. So we looked at all those options, and we talked with government, we talked with the pastoral stations who are also being impacted, and we talked to some of them on this trip. And Martu really then came to the decision that, well, yes, culturally they were much more likely to say you can't kill for the killing's sake. Martu made a really hard but strong decision to say that in Wirralli country, in faraway country, they'd actually work with government to use aerial culling to actually reduce the number of camels, so that when they go back to country, and this is country which some of them haven't been back for 20, 30 years to some of this country, that when they go back, it's not trashed. It's actually healthy again. A recent return to country trip, the elders were horrified when they went back to discover that these very, very significant water holes were just trashed. Too many camels. Far too many camels for the country to be able to sustain.
Right. I guess one of the other striking things over the last few days too has been that although this is a significant problem for Martu, I guess in some senses it's a relation building thing, it's an opportunity, because when you talk to pastoralists and you're talking to the mining companies, they seem to have this enormous amount of respect for Martu and really listen to their views about things. So obviously that's the building of a relationship, I guess, against a common problem.
Yeah, sure. I think that one of the really good things that came out of that decision, or part of that process which led to the decision by Martu to use culling as one of the ways to reduce camel numbers, was that we actually had really good dialogue with some of the pastoral stations bordering the western boundary of Martu country, as well as Department of Agriculture, Department of Environment Conservation, all of whom we all sat down together and talked around the issues and went through all the different options that Martu, that government, that pastoralists have thought of before. We went through the numbers, we looked at those things, and really it was a very constructive process. And I think now, as you're saying, you can see the benefits of that, where there's actually a lot of goodwill between those parties to actually move forward and actually resolve this, but not only just resolve it now, put in place processes which will actually be sustainable longer term.
Right. And look, there are, I guess, around Australia and probably around the world, a lot of people who love animals and animal liberation groups who, obviously find any sort of reduction in numbers of any population, animal population, repugnant. What would you say to those people on behalf of the Martu people? I mean, how would you give them a sense of just what a significant thing this is that they have to live with?
Look, I think Martu share their concerns. Martu don't want to see the camels suffer. They think they're a beautiful animal, and a lot of Martu grew up with smaller number of camels, but knowing and having worked with camels or whatever. So for Martu, Martu also, though, get concerned when they have to go to a waterhole, or they go to a waterhole and they find a camel dead in that waterhole, or they're trying to pull the dead camel out and it falls apart. How do you clean out a waterhole with half a camel in this, what sometimes is quite a small water source? So for them, and we've seen other photos in other areas in Australia where the camel numbers have got so high that in fact you have camels just dying of starvation and dying of thirst, and all standing around a waterhole. That is not good for camels, and in reality, when it comes to it, we think that the aerial culling is probably one of the most humane ways to actually deal with this issue. It's not perfect by any means, but neither is mustering a camel across multiple sand dunes, putting them on a truck and then trucking them hundreds of kilometres or thousands of kilometres to be slaughtered.
Mm.